الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Respected brothers and sisters, whoever's watching and whoever's listening, Alhamdulillah, we have now reached up to page number 92 of the book that we're reading, Maraq Sa'adat's translation, and we have reached the chapter of prayer of the traveller, Salatul Musafir. And this is of course after the chapters of which spoke about the fara'id, the wajibat, the sunan, the makruhat of salah, those things which are generally allowed in salah, which we may think sometimes may not be. We've spoken about praying on a riding animal, praying while riding on an animal. We've spoken about praying on a ship and so on and so forth. Praying on a car we've spoken about as well in our previous lessons. And today inshallah we're speaking about generally the concept of Salatul Musafir or Qasr, like we say sometimes, the prayer of the traveller. And the prayer of the traveller is not always the same as the prayer of the Muqim, who is the resident in his local city, in his local town. And so we read by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the minimum period of travel whereby certain legal rulings take effect is 3 days on a camel. 309 will tell you, footnote, that is the least distance for travel for certain rulings to take effect is a camel's journey of 3 days, which is roughly 48 miles. So now, obviously, traditionally or historically, we'll be talking about the time it takes, the 3 days of a camel journey, but now it is calculated by miles. We say 48 miles or 50 miles generally. So for you to be considered a musafir and enjoy the sort of relaxed rulings of Sharia, or some of the rulings which take effect as musafir, you must be traveling a distance more than 50 miles. The minimum period of travel whereby certain legal rulings would take effect is 3 days on a camel. Thus, when a person has left his place of residence, intending to travel at a medium pace to a place that he will reach in at least 3 days, then he does not fast. So now, generally what we say now is, if you're planning to go to Northampton or Colchester or down south somewhere else, okay, if it's Brighton, Eastbourne, wherever you might go, more than 50 miles, and you are now considered to be a musafir, with the condition that you become a musafir as soon as you have left your city limits or your borough's limits. We'll come to that inshallah in a moment. Then he does not fast at a medium pace to a place that he will reach in at least 3 days. Then he does not fast in Ramadan, and he shortens the 4 rakah obligatory prayers. He is not allowed to pray them as 4 rakahs. If he does pray the full 4 rakahs and sits the first sitting between the second and the third rakahs, then the prayer is valid, although he has committed a serious error. Otherwise it is invalid. Okay, basically what we're saying is, Salatul Musafir, we have the whole concept of azima and rukhsa in Sharia. What's the original status of something, and what's a rukhsa, meaning a special, an offer or a reduction generally, okay? Rukhsa is license generally, but a reduction from Sharia. Now, generally, when you're a muqim, it is azima, it is the normal demand of Sharia from you to pray your normal 4 rakat of Zuhr, 4 rakats fard of Asr, and so on and so forth, 4 rakats fard of Isha. Now, while you're traveling, ulama have differed on, while you're traveling, which one is better for you to pray your full salah, or is it better for you to shorten your prayer? Okay, so understand. So the ulama have differed on, is it azima to pray the full salah, or is it azima, the original status, or is it better for you? Or it is the natural demand of Sharia to pray for you the shortened prayer. So the difference is based on, of course, evidences and discussions and ahadith and athar and so on and so forth, in which, okay, we find that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was on journeys, he would reduce his prayers, the 4 rakat prayers, into 2. Obviously the 3 rakats prayers, there's no reduction, you can't do 1.5 rakats. And 2 rakats don't become 1 rakat as well. it's just the 4 rakat salahs which become 2 rakat. Now we find the Prophet ﷺ has reduced his prayers to 2 rakat. And we don't want to get into too much of the usul of it. But generally, according to the Hanafi school of law, the school of thought, the Hanafi legal system, it demands, or Sharia demands of you to pray the shortened prayer. Because Allah has given you an offer, He has made your life easy, and for you to reduce the offer of a king, the king of all kings, is somewhat rude, is considered. That's one aspect of it. And then we find other hadith, the athar would say that the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ used to pray the shortened prayer when they used to travel. And based on the different evidences and the different evidence that they have collected and thought to be the strongest, they have decided and they have passed the ruling, generally in the Hanafi school of law, that it is better for you to pray your shortened prayer. If you however do pray your longer prayer, the normal muqim prayer, it is okay, but it's wrong to do so. It's makruh basically for you to pray your longer prayer. Now it might sound strange to you what you're talking about, but generally based on evidence and the collections and the tarjih of the Hanafi school of law, that is what it is. If you are following a different opinion, or if you think that what's being said here is incorrect, that's also fine, as long as it's based on evidence, of course. But generally, that's the Hanafi stance on it. As for Ramadan, the fasting of it, inshallah, we'll speak about in a minute. If he does pray the full 4 rakahs and sits the first sitting, then the prayer is valid, although he has committed a serious error. Otherwise, it is invalid. 3 and 4, let's see what he's saying here. That if he misses the first sitting altogether, the obligatory prayer is rendered invalid. Okay, since he has omitted an obligatory fard integral, namely the final sitting of the 2 rakahs, the 4 rakahs are deemed a voluntary prayer, and he must pray his obligatory prayer once again. So generally, to summarize and to make it easy for you, you should pray the shortened prayer. Okay, you can pray nawafil while you're musafir, but the reduced prayer, you should pray it as reduced as far as this is concerned. He may not shorten any prayer aside from the 4 rakat obligatory prayers. We know this. If he is at a halt on the journey while in a state of rest, he should pray the emphasized sunnah prayers along with the obligatory and mandatory prayers. Otherwise, he may leave them. So if you're stopping somewhere for a few days, you have the energy, okay, you're relaxed, you have enough time, you have enough water, so on and so forth, you should also try to pray your sunnah prayers. And instead pray only the obligatory and mandatory prayers if you're not on a halt. Once he has reached a city or a village, once he reaches a city or a village and intends on staying there for at least 15 full days, so more than 14. If it's 14 days or less, then you're still counted as a musafir. The moment you intend to stay for 15 days or more, then you now have become a resident. Okay, he must, and therefore, when you go to Egyptian borders and you want to get a visa for £20, they allow you only 14 days. I don't know if this is connected, but 14 days seems to be, as far as this opinion is concerned, if you're 14 days, then you're a musafir, and if it's longer, then you must go to the embassy beforehand and apply for a 3-month visa. Okay, if it's longer, you become a muqim. He must complete the 15 full. Once he reaches a city or village and intends on staying there for at least 15 full days, he must complete the 4 rakah obligatory prayers rather than shortening them, and must fast in Ramadan. Otherwise, if he is still on the journey or is residing somewhere other than his normal place of residence for less than 15 days, then he does not complete the 4 rakahs nor fast. Rather, he must still shorten those prayers and may still choose to not fast in Ramadan. So now look, we're talking about while you're traveling, what's better for you to do? To pray shortened or to pray longer? When it comes to Salah, we're generally saying it's better for you to pray shortened. However, when it comes to fasting, Ramadan, you can. It's up to you. Though the right indication to say it is better for you to fast, to try and fast. Okay, so it's the opposite over there. But generally, when it comes to Ramadan's fasting, shall I fast or not? It's up to you. And this is, of course, if you're outside your city limits, your borough, when the fast itself starts. So now, say for example, you intend to travel today to Birmingham, but that's at 10 o'clock in the morning. And at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, when it's suhoor time, you're still here. As far as this is concerned, you should start your fast. You should fast. Why? Because you're not a traveler at that particular moment. And وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. Okay, if you are on a journey, then in that case, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, sorry, the ayah of كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامِ, generally it talks about while you are in the state of a safar. And of course, okay, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةً فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. Okay, أو على سفر, or on a journey. Okay, so that of course indicates that you should be on a journey, in a journey, while you are excused. For you to be excused, you should be in the journey. And that's going to come anyway, inshallah, you'll see. Then he does not complete the 4 rakats, no fast. Rather, he must still shorten those prayers and may still choose not fast in Ramadan. The journey of a traveler ends upon entering city limits of his normal place of residence. وَطْنَ الْأَصْلِ. You can have more than one place of residence. So you have a home in say for example Birmingham, you have a home in Leicester, you have a home in Manchester, and those are all your homes. You stay there, you own those properties, you stay there. These are known to be your, or if you're married in more than one place, for example, if you have family scattered around and you actually live with them, generally, okay. So generally, you can't have more than one watan al-asli or one watan. So whenever you arrive at the city limit, so for example, when you go to Bangladesh, as you arrive into your locality, you are now a resident, even though you don't generally live there, but it is your home. Once you go there, you do own that property, you do stay there. Okay, you are counted as a resident of that particular place. And obviously, staying, if you're staying for less than 14 days. If it's more than 14 days, then you're a muqim regardless anyway. If he, the traveler, prays behind a resident imam, now it's going to get a bit complicated. If he, the traveler, prays behind a resident imam within the prayer time, his prayer is valid. So for example, you go to a masjid, resident imam is leading, we come to Darul Ummah, I'm leading, or someone else is leading, Shaykh Abul Hasanat is leading, and he's musafir, and it's within time. Then the musafir's traveler's prayer is of course valid because he's joined us. And he must pray the full 4 rakats. Afterwards, it is not. This afterwards is explained in the footnote. Meaning, say for example, we are all residents of this particular town of Tower Hamlets, and time has gone, time is finished. Okay, and me, Imran Bhai, Minhaj Bhai, and Baisab here, and a few of us got together, and we decided that even though we missed our waqt, we'll still do Jama'at. Okay, and then all of a sudden a musafir comes, and he wants to join us. Now, because we're praying outside of the time, khalas, his prayer would not be counted as part of our prayer, because we have started with the intention of qada and so on and so forth. Okay, so that afterwards, it is not meaning after the time has finished. And 316 will explain that to you a bit more if you read it. If he, the traveler, prays behind a resident imam within the prayer time, okay, within Asr time, Dhuhr time, his prayer is valid and he must pray the full 4 rakats. Afterwards, it is not. In the opposite scenario, the prayer of the resident follower. So now I am musafir. Okay, or Sheikh Abdul Basit came, Sheikh Sudais came, or Sheikh Basfar came here, and he's musafir, or we say please lead. Of ihtiram, and he's a guest, and of course he's a renowned scholar, so we let him go forward and he leads. He is now reading generally 2 rakats, and Sheikh Sudais did actually do that when he went to Shah Jalal's in Shadi Park Masjid. He read 2 rakats and he said to everybody else, I am praying 2 rakats, you guys complete your prayer. So he seems to be following the Hanafi opinion of having to, or you should pray the two rakats when you're traveling. Otherwise you'd maybe pray it 4. But generally, we do pray 2 rakats when we're traveling, especially if it's generally, okay. So now, if in the opposite scenario, the prayer of the resident follower would be valid in both cases, with the condition, however, that the resident does not complete the 4 rakats with his imam, the traveler. If the imam incorrectly performed the 4 rakats instead of 2. So generally, look, we need to understand that within this legal system, we have a huge emphasis on the imam. Okay, so if the imam gets something wrong, and if the imam's intention is different from yours, then there's a problem. Because we depend, the Hanafi understanding of Salah generally is very much dependent on the imam. And that's because there are so many hadith, or there is particular hadith which say that, if you have an imam, then the Salah of your imam is your prayer. And so when we talk about reciting behind the imam Surah Al-Fatiha and so on and so forth, this all goes back to that whole discussion. Because they have understood that when the imam is praying, then his prayer is basically encompassing everyone else's prayer. And so therefore, the musallis behind do not have to recite Surah Fatiha or recite anything, they just have to recite the du'as. And this is of course based on the particular evidence that they found to be stronger. So now see, if, say for example, the musafir is leading, okay, let's read once more the opposite scenario. The prayer of the resident follower would be valid in both cases, with the condition, however, that the resident does not complete the 4 rakahs with his imam, the traveler, if the imam incorrectly performs 4 rakahs instead of 2, because he has made intention for 2 rakahs. Then he has prayed 4 rakahs. Is it correct? No, it's not. Because first of all, we say originally you should be praying 2 rakahs in the first place. Then you have re-emphasized these 2 rakahs by making a niyyah for it. And now you have gone opposite to the legal system's requirement of 2, and also against your intention, your ahd or your contract that you made with Allah as you started your prayer. And you've done, and therefore for you to pray 4 rakahs in this particular scenario, for the imam would be wrong, and for the follower, his salah would also, as far as the legal system is concerned, would not be valid. Okay, if the imam incorrectly performs the 4 rakahs instead of 2. 4. If he completes it with him, the resident's follower's obligatory prayer is rendered invalid and counts as a voluntary prayer instead. So therefore he'd have to pray his normal fard again. It's a bit dense here and may need a bit of extra research into usul and generally those kind of things. But again, we don't want to get into too many dense facts. But generally we need to understand the concept that as far as this particular legal system is concerned, the salah is very much dependent on the imam, right? And so if, say for example, the imam forgets to make wudu, and he says afterwards, I didn't have wudu, okay? Then as far as the Hanafi legal system is concerned, everyone's salah is invalid. Other ai*imma, other ulama may say to you, other opinions may say to you, that the followers' salahs are valid, but the imam has to repeat his salah. Why? Because you find in those legal systems, the musallis behind the imam, they're also reading the Fatiha. So it's somewhat independent. It has its own, they do more activities by themselves, and therefore those are factors that make the salah independently stronger or stand by itself to a certain extent. So we see that it comes hand in hand. Okay, the strictness of what the imam does comes in because, as far as the legal system is concerned, the salah depends a lot on the imam himself. And for that reason, we find in Hanafi books of fiqh and other books, we find that there are so many conditions of imam and so many precautions an imam has to take to make sure that the salah is extra in 100% tip top, so that the people praying behind are also inshallah getting maximum reward. So it's a big responsibility generally. A missed 4 rakah prayer on a journey is made up as 2 rakahs. And now we'll come back to easy shores inshallah. Those 2 chapters in the middle, paragraphs in the middle were a bit dense. A missed 4 rakah prayer on a journey is made up as 2 rakahs. So if you were supposed to pray dhuhr while you were going to Birmingham last week or yesterday, and you missed it. But at that particular time when that waqt was coming in and going out, you were supposed to recite or pray only 2 rakats. So therefore in your account you only have an outstanding balance of 2 rakats. Even if one is no longer a traveler when making it up, likewise a missed 4 rakat prayer while residing is made up as 4 rakats while you're a traveler. So now you're traveling and you realize, hey, I've got so many missed salahs, I've got some time now, I'm stuck in a transit somewhere in Dubai, in Amman, wherever you are, and you've got 4 hours on your transit, and I've got, say for example, dhuhr left from a few days ago, and so on and so forth, and you want to make them up. Now you can't say, hey, I'm a traveler, let me pray them as 2 rakats. You have to pray as many rakats as it was wajib for you when you missed it. So that's what's important to note, that when you missed it, how many rakats were you supposed to pray? Someone said to me once, that you know what I'm going to do? When I have loads of missed prayers, I'm just going to go on a journey. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just going to go and pray them half price. I was like, no, it's not going to work like that. You can't pray, your normal 4 rakats that you miss as 2, as backdated. You have to backdate as it was. Okay, if you have a fine of £60, then you have to at least pay the £60, right? Yeah, it might increase later on as well. Even if one is on a journey while making it up. The end of the prayer time is what is considered for this and other legal rulings. So the end of the prayer time is for something to become qada, like past prayers, when the prayer time has ended. So when the Asr waqt is finished, then that's considered to be the qada of that particular time. So when we're talking about, say for example, a missed prayer, a missed dhuhr while you're traveling, we're talking about the time finishing. Khalas? If you still got time, then of course you can pray. Prayer of the sick person. A traveler in a permissible journey and one in a journey of disobedience are equivalent with regards to legal rulings of the journey itself, such as shortening the prayer and the option of not fasting. Now, there is, of course, again, an ikhtilaf, especially in the Shafi'i madhab, they say, for example, that if you're on a journey to rob someone or to do something, disobey Allah, then the concession and the discount shouldn't be applicable to you, because the application of the discount is based on you being a good customer. If you're going to come into the shop and decide to rob it and still want the discount afterwards, then you might not get it. So they, as far as they're concerned, they're saying that you're going to disobey Allah and therefore you shouldn't get the discount. But then within our legal system, Hanafi legal system, we say regardless, because the evidence is not conditioned to whether you're on a journey of ta'ah or a journey of ma'siyah, a journey of obedience or of disobedience. So in either case, supposedly, if someone was to be going to steal someone's house in Birmingham, and we hope they're not, and they decided to pray somewhere in Northamptonshire, and they would still pray 2 rakats. We hope they don't do that, and we hope that this salah reminds them, inna salat tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, reminds them, and they stop what they wanted to do in the first place. And this is, of course, one of the reasons as well that maybe the prayer will stop him from doing prayer of the sick person. If it is difficult or impossible for a sick person to stand in prayer, he may pray the obligatory fard prayer sitting, yet still bowing for ruku by bending his head and back and prostrating sujood normally on the ground. If normal prostration is also impossible or very difficult, then he prays by head movements by bending his neck for each, making his head motion for prostration sujood lower than that for bowing. All very easy and understandable. If you have any problems, you can go to the footnotes. If sitting is impossible or very difficult, he may pray with head movements while lying down, either on his back or on his side, with face directed towards the Qibla. If he is unable to perform head movements, then he does. Okay, no. If he is unable to perform head movements, then he does not pray. If you can't move your head at all, then there is no prayer. And if this state lasts for over a full day and night, then according to most scholars, he becomes absolved of these obligatory prayers, meaning he does not have to make them up later. So, we're saying, as long as you can move your head, even while lying down, then you should pray. As for, if you can't move your head at all, then according to this particular legal ruling, you can't pray with your eyes or in your mind. You can't pray with your mind and in your eyes. You have to pray with your head, and there has to be some physical body movement to indicate the prayer. If you can't pray with your head for more than a full day's prayer, so Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, or Maghrib, Isha, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, okay, 5 prayers, and you've gone into the 6th one, and on the 6th one you still didn't get better and you can't pray, then because it's been such a serious circumstance for you, those 5 or 6 prayers, or those prayers, you don't have to make up for them anyway. Khalas? So this is a particular a rahmah from the Sharia, from the Sharia as far as this opinion is concerned. Okay, to say that you shouldn't have to, or you don't pray with your eyes or in your mind. You have to pray. You have to make some sort of gesture. Let's read once again. If he is unable to perform head movement, then he does not pray. And if this state lasts for over a full day and night, then according to most scholars, he becomes absolved of these obligatory prayers, meaning he does not have to make them up later. Other scholars, however, maintain that he must make them up upon recovery. 3 to 4 will tell you the first position, which states that he becomes absolved of making up of those prayers, is stronger and is the position of the legal verdict fatwa. If, however, the state lasted for 5 prayer times or less, then prayers would have to be made up upon recovery. In either case, one does not pray by eye or eyebrow movements, okay, nor in one's heart or mind alone. If one does so, it is not valid as a ritual prayer. Okay, so if you can't do it with your head, then it's, as far as discipline is concerned, it's not counted. If one loses consciousness or sanity for a duration of 5 obligatory fard prayers or less, he must make them up upon recovery. If longer, he does not. So this is similar to when you can't move yourself, if you're paralyzed, or if you're, whatever the case may be, or if you're unconscious. So those two are more or less hand in hand in terms of his ruling. If it's more than 5 prayers into the 6, and it will be 3 to 5 will tell you, that is for the issue of someone unable to perform head movements, as well as this issue of losing consciousness. The point at which one becomes absolved of having to make up any missed prayers is by the expiration of the 6th missed prayer. So if you've missed 6 or more than a whole day, you're completely unconscious, or you're completely paralyzed, and you can't move your head, then, according to this particular opinion, Sharia will not oppress you or make your life extra hard by asking you to now, while you've recovered, when you've recovered to, right, to make up for those prayers. However, losing consciousness or sanity, if this particular case was because of alcohol, or becoming extremely drunk, hungover, and so on and so forth, but generally you don't become drunk for that long. Not based on the films. Based on what we know. I mean, if someone has a different experience, it might be medical. But generally, when people get drunk, the following morning they wake up, they feel very sick, and then they have a very strong headache, and then they feel better again, as far as the films are concerned. Okay, and so it shouldn't last for a whole 5-6 waqts of salah, a day and a night. Okay, now if it did last for a whole day and a night, then it became probably a medical reason. So in that case, the concession will still be valid. But if it's out of drunkenness, you miss 3-4 salahs, that's not counted anyway. Being absolved of the obligation of prayer or fasting. What's the time? Where are we? Shall we carry on? Shall we just read this part? Yeah, it's quite short. So absolved meaning you don't have to pray at all now. There are some cases in which you don't have to pray at all. If a sick person who was unable to perform obligatory fast and obligatory prayers by head movements dies, or if a traveler dies on his journey in which he missed fasts, okay, he was allowed to. In either case, having died before attaining unto alternative days, أيام أخر, then it is not necessary for either one of them to have left a bequest in his will for a expiatory payment, fidya, on behalf of those missed prayers of fast. So now we're saying this is kind of common sense, in the sense that, you're so ill and you died from that illness, you didn't get better at all. So that salah was not fard upon you anyway. Or, for example, if you have died in your journey, you wasn't supposed to fast anyway, and you never had enough time to make up for them. So this is out of your control. So therefore there is no fidya for those. Fidya meaning a charity that is given in replacement for those people who can't pray because of medical reasons, or for not being able to fast for medical reasons. We're coming to that inshallah. If the two, i.e. the sick person recovering or the traveler residing for at least 15 days, were able to pray or fast yet did not perform those makeups before death, then the two must leave a bequest in the will for the expiatory payment of half a sa', 2.2 kgs of wheat, half a sa', or a full sa' of barley, 4.4 kgs of barley, or its equivalent in cash. Okay, so now we can find out, based on that particular time, the particular age, the particular market, if it's in Bangladesh you're paying, England you're paying, wherever you're paying, what would be the price of 2.2 kgs of wheat, or the price of 4.4 kgs of barley. How much is 2.2 kgs of wheat? Does anyone know? Weetabix? I think this is Weetabix, a bit different, but it shouldn't be. It's not a crazy amount of money. It's reasonable. So we'll come back to that inshallah. Or its equivalent in cash for each missed obligatory fard prayer, even witr. So witr is considered to be something you have to pray. You have to pay fidya for as well. 3 to 8 will explain to you why, since according to Abu Hanifa, witr is an effect, an obligation, fard amali, murakafara. So obviously generally we say it's wajib, but according to Abu Hanifa, it's fard amali, which is a bit more stronger generally. But in any case, we understand the witr to be something of obligation. You must do it. And like we said before, even those ulama have said it's sunnah. It's a very, very strong sunnah. Very strong sunnah. And for each missed day of fasting. So once more, for each missed, from the previous sentence, we say, if the two, i.e. the sick person recovering or the traveler residing for at least 15 days, were able to pray or fast, yet did not perform those makeups before death, then the two must have leave a bequest in their will for the expiatory payment of half a sa', 2.2 kgs of wheat, or full sa', 4.4 kgs of barley, or its equivalent cash for each missed obligatory fard prayer, even if it's witr, and for each missed day of fasting. This money is to be taken out of a third of his estate before division of his inheritance. And as we know that when someone dies, his inheritance, his mirath, is divided into three parts. Okay, one for his debts and his payments and things that need to be done for himself, 1/3 for his inheritors to acquire and to take, and 1/3 for the cost of his funeral and so on and so forth. And of course, the experts who get involved will be able to divide and tell you exactly based on that particular amount, okay, how much and what exactly how many pounds should go to who. And we know that the method of division or how to divide inheritance is very particular in Islam, and it's very precise, and it must be done according to how the Quran and the Sunnah have taught it to us. And in the Quran is mentioned clearly, you know, the nisf and ruba and thuman and all that is mentioned very clearly in Surah An-Nisa. And it's a very important science to learn and to maintain, to remember. It's short, but it's quite hard to remember. And according to some hadith, that it's going to be one of the first knowledges to disappear from earth. Okay, and some other narrations say that it's half of knowledge. And they say, how do you understand half of knowledge? How is that half of knowledge? And some of the ulama will explain to you by saying, well, you know, your life is half, and your afterlife is the other half. So this is to do with your afterlife. So this is half of your knowledge, because it's to do with you after you've died. Okay, but generally, not going into inheritance just yet. This money is taken from your third of your estate. If an heir of his or another third party voluntarily pays on his behalf, then it is valid for the amount incumbent upon him. So now you didn't want to take it out of it. Someone said, don't take it from his mirath. I will give it. I'll give it. An heir or someone else, a third party, then that's also valid as long as someone pays for each missed fard prayer and also each missed fast. If the portion, i.e. a third of the deceased estate is not sufficient for that, then the executor of the will may pay an indigent person. Or is indigent person, faqir, with the intention of expiation. So now if you don't have enough money, then someone in the community, the executor of the will, okay, will ask a faqir person to basically keep the fast. So hold on, let's read it exactly how it is. If it's not sufficient for that, then the executor of the will may pay an indigent person, faqir, with the intention of expiation, of forgiveness, and its payment, and then take back what he paid from the heirs, from the people of mirath later on. Does that make sense? Take back from who? The person who passed away. Take back from the family. As a result, the deceased will become absolved of that equivalent amount of prayers or fasts. Understood more or less, inshallah? Clear. If there are any questions, we'll come to that. It is valid to pay the expiatory payment fidya for multiple prayers or fasts, all to one indigent person, as opposed to the expiation for breaking an oath, kafarat al-yamin or the like. 332 will tell you that's because for which one may not give more than one expiatory payment per day to one recipient. Now this is going into, you know, when you break a promise, wallahi I'll do such and such, wallahi I will give such and such. If you break that, then the expiation, you can only give it to one person per oath. But here for the SARS and for the fast, you can give it for more than one salah, more than one fast to one person. One may not perform ritual prayer salat on behalf of another, as it will not count for him. Okay? So someone's passed away in your family, instead of giving fidya, you decide to pray on their behalf. It's not going to work. You can't do that. And it will not reduce the amount of expiatory payment for his missed prayers. You can't decide, I'll keep the money and just pray them. That's not allowed. The expiatory payment is to be paid only to the indigent fuqara, while it is hoped that Allah will overlook the sin of his dead servant by his limitless grace. And that brings us towards the end of that particular chapter. And next part is the witr prayer and the emphasized sunnah prayers coming inshallah. And then Taraweeh, Qadha, praying inside the Kaaba, catching up congregational prayer, and so many things to inshallah. A prostration of the sujood coming inshallah, prostration of the sajda tilawa, the Jumu'ah, sajda shukr, so many of course, the Eid prayers, and moving on from Salah into Hajj, Zakat, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala, in the days to come. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability and accept from all of us and guide us always, and give us the ability to act upon what we learn, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. Any questions?
Yeah, the shortening of the prayers, that just relates to the fard prayer, right? Of the sunnahs.
Yes, only to fard prayers.
You give the example of Sheikh Suzais. He came and he led the prayer. He did 2 rakat. Then he asked him to.
Yes. On the footnote it says it's recommended for you to tell everyone that I am a musafir, so you complete your prayers. But generally you should tell people beforehand.
But as in, he told them that he's a traveler, so they prayed 2 with him. That's it.
Yes, and then they stood up and completed the 4.
Okay.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So if you're the imam for any 4 rakats, and obviously that's only namely Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha. There's no other 4 rakat fard.
Yeah.
Maghrib is 3 and Fajr is 2. You should say I'm a musafir. Please complete your prayer. And for example, if you are leading a bigger congregation, some people join afterwards, then you should also say salam and let everybody know that they should complete their prayer.
So as in, they don't do the salam, they get up. And
they get up. They just wait for you to finish your salam, you move on, and they complete the prayer. And there is of course the mas'ala of if someone comes late, but that's a separate mas'ala, inshallah. I'm sure we'll come to it anyway, that if you come late to prayer, which part of the prayer do you make up for? That's a separate mas'ala. Again, it's mukhtalaf fi mas'ala, and there are differences of opinion, but inshallah we'll maybe come to that as the book goes on. Any other questions?
Yeah, last week you spoke about movement within Salah. So just in relation to that, when you're praying in Jama'ah, and sometimes you find empty spaces in front of you, and you take 1-2 steps to fill that gap in. So what's the ruling regarding that?
That's fine. So like you just said, 1-2 steps. Generally when it comes to 1-2 motions, movements, it's okay. You should be fine inshallah to fill up the gap. But you shouldn't do more than, even when it comes to killing a scorpion, within 2 strikes. So you should limit your movement as much as possible, but you should fill up the gap. It's okay. It shouldn't be a problem inshallah. And this is also very important because sometimes we find, like say for example, this is very important. Sometimes there's a fire exit and Akhi is praying, mashallah, he's praying the sunnah, and people are literally getting blocked. He could easily take 1 step sideways. Khalas, and that wouldn't be considered amal kathir. It's just one step and it'll open up the door for everybody. You should bear that in mind. We have it's generally because people maybe don't know, they think that if they move once it's going to break their salah. But those kind of movements, especially for the ease of access, and especially if it's an emergency case, sometimes it's a dire case and where people just praying the sunnahs and so on and so forth. It's really, really important to bear that in mind. It shouldn't be a problem, inshallah, to make a step or 2 to fill up the gap. Anything else? Okay. The particular masala someone asked about last week, I'm still thinking about it or looking into it, inshallah. But one thing we've noticed is about the ship, when you're praying on the ship.
Yeah.
If one prays obligatory or mandatory prayers in a ship while sitting, even without an excuse, it is valid, yet he must turn toward the Qibla every time it changes direction. Now, even without an excuse part, we're talking about generally when you sit down, you need an excuse. Khalas? Generally, when you want to sit down and pray, you need an excuse. You have to not be able to stand. It must be very difficult for you to stand or impossible for you to stand. So now, if one prays in a ship while sitting, even without an excuse, without an excuse to sit down, it is valid. Now, generally, we need an excuse to sit down. But then, sometimes we find that being in the ship itself is the excuse. Are you following what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So generally when you're on land, you need certain excuses to sit down. But being on the ship itself becomes the excuse. Does that make sense to you? So yes, he's saying even without an excuse, that's a normal excuse. But being in an aircraft where the steward is telling you, do not stand up, do not pray there, you're blocking a fire exit. Do not go up and pray in the back because I will get the security man to have a word with you. So then in that case, for you to sit down, or the aircraft itself becomes the excuse. So now we're not saying, we're not legitimizing you to pray sitting down for no reason. There is a reason, and the reason is the ship itself. Does that make a bit of sense? But inshallah, we'll maybe when we research a bit more, inshallah, then maybe we can come back to this question again, inshallah. But that's one factor that I sort of thought of while I was reading it again. It is valid, yet he must put two. So we can see that there's two factors. There are so many conditions of praying, right? One is, of course, you need to carry out your arkan and your activities properly. So we see that that's excused. The standing is excused. Why? Because the excuse of ship has allowed for you to sit down. But then we are still requiring you to face Qibla, because that's also an excuse. So it's not that you go on a ship and that's it. It's everything is lifted. You are still required to do as much as possible. Does that make sense? Remember when we said that if you pray on an aircraft, you do your best to maintain the time of the prayer. And then if you want to pray ihtiyatan once again after when you've landed, then that is something you can do. Does that make sense? Because we have some people that they're on a journey and they can't be bothered to step on a service station and they just pray while they're sitting in the car. That's not accepted. You need to understand Salah is quite serious. You can't just do that. Some people do that. They're on a journey and they can't bother to stop or even to stop on the side. Khalas? When we go to Muslim countries, mashallah, we see people are stopping their Humvees and laying out a mat and having a cup of tea and praying the Salah. It's so nice as well. It's arresting. But generally, you need to carry out the obligations, the activities of your prayer. It's really, really important. But inshallah, may Allah give us the ability to understand and to learn and to practice, inshallah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.